Okay. And we are online, I think. Okay. Yes, yes.
Hello and welcome. I warmly welcome you to our 57th webinar by the Academy of Space Renaissance International. On this February 19, I'm really delighted that you have come to join us. And my name is Sabine Heinz. I'm the person responsible for our webinar series. And I'm one of the vice presidents of Space Renaissance International. And I'm also responsible for our art chapter. Our today's special guest is Giulio Prisco. Hello, Giulio.
Hello, Sabine. Good to see you.
Yeah, good to see you too. And we are really happy that you are here. And Giulio will talk about space expansion, cultural considerations, long-term perspectives, and spiritual implications. So we have a really interesting topic as usual. And yeah, we are really glad that you are here. And I also would like to welcome Adriano Ortino. He's also one of our vice presidents and former president and one of the founders of Space Renaissance International. Hello, Adriano.
Hi, Sabine. Glad to see you. I'm glad to see Giulio. Yeah.
Hello, Adriano.
Giulio, before I give you the floor, I would like to introduce you to our audience. Giulio Prisco is a writer, futurist, and sometimes philosopher. He worked as a scientist in European research centers, including CERN, and then as a space system analyst at the European Space Agency, ESA, then as a senior manager in the public sector, space sector, and as a technology entrepreneur, and as a writer. He is especially interested in the intersections of science, philosophy, and religion. Giulio has been a scientist and manager in European science and technology centers. Then he has been running a virtual reality company and doing some technology consulting and freelance writing. He writes and speaks on a wide range of topics, including science, information technology, emerging technologies, virtual worlds, space exploration, and future studies. Interested in the intersections of science and religion, spirituality and technology, engineering and science fiction, mind and matter, hacking religion, enlightening science, awakening technology. Exploring outer and inner spaces. See the Turing Search website. Some books authored by Giulio, one is Tales of the Turing Church, Hacking Religion, Enlightening Science, Awakening Technology, and the other one is Futurist Spaceflight Meditations, sorry. And formerly, he was a researcher at CERN, a staff member at the European Space Agency, and a senior manager at the European Union Satellite Center. Giulio Prisco is a physicist and computer scientist. He served as a member on the board of the directors of the World Transhumanist Association, of which he was the executive director, and the board of directors of the Institute of Ethics and Emerging Technologies, from which he resigned in 2021. He's currently the president of the Associazione Italiana Transhumanisti. He is also a founding member of the Order of Cosmic Engineers and the Turing Church. I think I pronounced it wrong. Maybe you can correct me later on.
You pronounced everything right.
Yeah. Fledgling organizations which claim that the benefit of the technological singularity, which would come from accelerating change, should or would be viable alternatives to the promises of major religion groups. And he lives actually in Budapest, Hungary. Is it right?
Yes.
Yes. Okay. Giulio, the floor is yours, and you may start your show.
Sorry,
What?
Sabine, before giving the floor to Giulio, just give me 30 seconds to give some information about SRI, because Bernard Foying, that usually participates, Bernard is our president of the SRI, and usually participates to these webinars, but in these days and last weeks, he was in Singapore and other extreme east locations. Therefore, the time is not convenient for him to be here, because now he's in the middle of the night for him. So okay, but however, I just would like to give news about what we are doing. We are working hard to participate to the COPWAS sessions, next COPWAS sessions in Vienna, to promote the 18 SDG, the Space 18 SDG, to the United Nations. And we are already working for the ISDC Los Angeles, for the National Space Society yearly conference, the International Space Development Conference, where we will have a special session on the 18 SDG. So we will be there talking and promoting this important thing. We are working, this workshop is entering now the hot preparation stage, the humanity, expansion of humanity into outer space, a workshop that is organized by the Target Young Generation Committee of the Space Renaissance Academy, by Ghanim Alotaibi, and so the call is now open, and already 13 participants registered, and we are going on with several preparatory webinars for the technical and not only technical arguments that will be useful for the participants to this contest. The contest will give to the winners a scholarship to participate to the IAF Congress in 2025. So, and last but not least, in October, we will participate to the IAC 75 in Milano this year. The International Astronautical Federation Congress will be in Milano. We will be there. We will have special sessions. We will have many papers, presentations, and we will have probably, I hope so, we will have a booth. So our presence, SRI presence at the IAC will be great, like the one in Paris 2 years ago. Okay, that's all by now. I just want to remember that we are an activist organization. We need members, we need donations, we need everything. I will share our important links in the chat, so anyone will be welcome to join us as members and to donate some money. Okay.
Okay, thank you. And while you are sharing the screen, Giulio, I would like to welcome our audience. And we have people watching from Dublin, Ireland, from Germany. And Ghanim is also watching from Kuwait. And we have someone watching from Serbia and also from the Netherlands. Giulio, the floor is yours. Good luck.
Thank you very much, Sabine. And thank you, Adriano. Thank you guys for having me. And especially thank you for the beautiful presentation. I almost don't have to talk because you said all the important things already. But since I'm here, let me do my best. Most of the things I'm going to say are taken from this rather small book called Futurist spaceflight Meditations. I wrote it in 2021. As you see, it's a very small book, very, very small, a little bit more than 100 pages. But I do talk of a lot of things in the book that I won't be discussing today. There are things about space technology and economy, technology that can support the space flight, even politics. I won't touch very much upon all these other things, but I will focus on cultural considerations and the long-term implications of human space flight and human space expansion, with special attention to philosophical and religious aspects. I want to, my screen has disappeared. Yeah, I want to mention that I'm not going to give any highlights now. Only want to mention that this year, no, last year in 2023, an Italian translation of my book was published. Italian is my mother language. I didn't write the book in Italian first because I thought, well, if it's even written in Italian, nobody's going to read it. But I'm happy to say that the Italian translation is being read, and there has been recently a review on a cultural magazine in Italian. So I hope both my books, both versions of my book will be read, because I do think I have some important points to make. And let me start like this. There are so many discussions among us space enthusiasts. For example, is the future NASA or is the future SpaceX? The Starship or the space launch systems? There are some partisans of both options who usually don't agree with each other. They want to see things proceed their way. There are discussions on whether space flight and the beginnings of space expansion should be a military or a civilian endeavor. There are discussions on whether it should be the US or China to lead the way. There are political discussions and a lot of partisan politics coming into the discussion from one or the other side. There are those kind of cultural discussions that inevitably bleed into politics, like, you know, the right stuff. By right stuff, I mean all these typical personality traits desired in astronauts and space settlers, like, you know, courage, hard work, endurance, optimism, and all that. Or should we see not only people with the right stuff, but also some people with some kind of left stuff in space? And my answer to all that is that I really don't give a damn. One way or the other way, always are welcome. To me, the important thing is that we go. We do begin to move out of the Earth and settle the solar system first, and then the rest of the universe. I am persuaded that beginning to expand into space is the most important task of humanity at this moment in history. So let's just go. We must get started on the road to the stars. And I think this is a passage from my book, and I think is among the most important ones. Our duty to God, or to God by any other name, or to the cosmos, or to some cosmic principle that favors life, or to life itself, is to expand beyond the Earth into the black sky. I'm really persuaded of that. Well, I'm going to recommend a lot of books, and I want to start recommending what I think are the best literary pictures of the Apollo adventure in the 1960s. One is of a of a Fire on the Moon by Norman Mailer, and another, If Se il Sole Muore, which is If the Sun Dies by Oriana Fallaci. These are really great books that capture very well the atmosphere, the excitement, the popular enthusiasm for spaceflight that we had in the 1960s, and seems to have been kind of dormant for a few decades. But now, luckily, it seems to be starting again. Norman Mailer interviewed all the first bunch of astronauts, and one of the passages that really impressed me is when Neil Armstrong said that, you know, it is our human nature to go to the moon, and we are required to do these things just as salmon swim upstream, which means it's really a part of our essential, fundamental human nature, and we should not go against our nature. And in Fallaci's book, you say a statement even stronger due to John Glenn, first American astronaut in orbit. And he said that we shouldn't even discuss whether we have the right, whatever that means, to expand into space, because it's not a right, it's a duty. And this is a concept I'm going to stress very much. We go out there, we expand into the solar system and then beyond, because it's our duty to do so. I'm going to offer some arguments in support of that. But now that I'm here, I want to mention one point that has to do with cultural and even political discussions on spaceflight. And the point that I want to make is that it is often heard things like, you know, oh, well, space flight and space expansion and all that are things that only men, as opposed to women, are interested in. And I totally disagree, because here we have a great book written by a woman who was also a great writer, and who was not really an enthusiast of spaceflight to begin with. She was a journalist, and she was a quite famous one. She interviewed all the major world personalities of her time. And while she was not an enthusiast of spaceflight to begin with, she kind of became one writing this book, and has confirmed her enthusiasm in other work. In this Italian edition of Se il Sole Muore, there is an interview with the author at the end, where she says that expanding beyond the Earth and going to live in other places in the universe is a love story. And that was a beautiful sentence. Now, remain on this point. It is said that only men are interested in space, and especially it will be only white men that are interested in space flight. And again, I completely disagree, because here we have a black woman, the great science fiction master Octavia Butler, who in two of her science fiction novels wrote this beautiful thing that I want to read aloud. The destiny of Earth's seed is to take root among the stars. If you like science fiction, like I hope you do, You'll find this in the novels Parable of the Sower and Parable of the Talents, written in the 1990s, which, even besides anything having to do with space, are two really great works of science fiction. Now, I will recommend also other books that you should read, but let me say a few words on some books that you should not read, because they are full of fashionable, politically correct nonsense. Can I say the other word? I guess no. So, okay. In particular, I was reading this first book titled Dark Skies by Daniel Deudney in 2020 and 2021, when I was writing my own book. And as you remember, 2020 and 2021 were the years of the lockdown, this COVID thing. Now, let me say that I myself almost did not even notice that there was a lockdown in place, because, well, normally what I like to do is to go for long walks in the woods with my dog. And what I was doing in that period was exactly going for long walks in the woods with my dog. So I almost didn't even notice that. But I know that many other people and many friends were deeply unsettled by the lockdown. And looking back, we cannot escape the question of whether all that was really necessary or not. Now, what this author of Dark Skies and also these other books is kind of proposing some kind of planetary lockdown, where we should stay confined on this planet for sometimes a few centuries, says Deudney, because I cannot say I cannot answer because I don't understand why. Just because I say so, because it's the right thing to do, because of something like that. And my argument against this idea of a planetary lockdown is this. These were studies done decades ago that shows what happens if you put too many rats in a cage without any possibility to go out. What happens is that the rats start killing each other and start behaving in destructive ways for themselves and for others that are very strongly reminiscent of some of the destructive things that we do ourselves, including random violence, toxic politics, racism, cancel culture, all that. No? So I say no, absolutely no, a very firm no to planetary lockdown. On the contrary, we must expand into space. And we are going. It seems that we are going. I'm showing a picture of the Tesla car of Elon Musk when it was launched into space a few years ago. I believe it's on its way to Mars, piloted by this Starman. He's not a person yet. He's a mannequin. But this is what I like to consider a symbol of the fact that we are finally going. And by the way, let me say that I am a very big fan of Elon Musk. I worship Elon Musk. I completely disagree on all the bad things that are usually said by certain press and commentators about him. However, the point is that we are eventually going. And this week we are watching this mission of intuitive machines that is making history. The launch was a couple of days ago. Now the probe is en route to the moon. We hope that the soft landing on 22, which is in a few days, will be successful, despite some unfortunate failures of other missions that we have seen in the last few years and in the last few months, actually. And I do like this mission very much, especially because one of the payloads is going to be this thing built by a Hawaiian organization, which we can consider as a small prototype of future large-scale lunar astronomical observatories and research facilities. And now, for all those who have read masterpieces of science fiction like Earthlight by Arthur C. Clarke, have this image of an observatory, or even more generally, a research facility in their mind, as a very powerful and very beautiful symbol of our immediate future in space. We'll start with the moon. But and it's good that now we are going back to the moon to stay. And we will not stop at the moon. And of course, we cannot discuss spaceflight without mentioning Starship. The first flight test a few months ago was successful, but not entirely. The second one was that was in November, was a bit more successful. And I do hope very much that the next flight test of Starship will make it to orbit. And Starship will change a lot of things. It will really change a lot of things. So we are going to the moon, and then we are going to Mars, and then we are moving onward to the planets and the stars. I'm showing a beautiful picture of last year that was taken by an astrophotographer, which shows Mars rising from behind the moon. This, to me, is a symbol of our future of tomorrow, which is the moon, and our future of after tomorrow, which is Mars. Human space expansion, colonization, and inhabitation, settlement of the moon, Mars, and the rest of the solar system. And as you can see, I'm wearing this Occupy Mars t-shirt. That is also my profile picture on X. This is, of course, a statement of support of spaceflight. But today, it is also kind of a political statement. And it is a political statement that I like to make myself. So, Occupy Mars, and here is to Elon Musk. I'm very optimistic, as you can see. As a matter of fact, I kind of force myself to be in an optimistic mood, because I believe it is only when you manage to put yourself into an optimistic mood that you are able to do things and achieve something good. But I also ask myself, what happens if we are forced to wait? Not centuries, like Professor Deudney wants, but decades, simply because we have too many problems to solve here. And these problems could be too strong and make it impossible to focus on space expansion at this moment. And of course, I'm talking of course, the possibility of war, possibility there could be other pandemics. No, the planet we are living on is a very difficult place, and we cannot forget that. But now I remember reading this other masterpiece of science fiction literature, Star Maker by Olaf Stapledon, who at some point tells a very interesting story. So in a planet far away, there was a symbiotic species. I imagine them as the fish and the crab that I'm showing in this picture. In fact, one that Stapleton calls ichtyoid is a big fish, something like a big fish. And the other that Stapleton calls arachnoid is a crustacean, you know, like these two animals that I'm showing in the picture. I imagine the fish much bigger than that, but besides that, that picture corresponds more or less to my imagination. Now, this is really one symbiotic species made by two different forms of life that live in symbiosis. And things go well until a certain point. But at that point, it becomes evident that only one of the two species can go out of the ocean and build a civilization on the hard surface of the planet. And of course, this creates tensions between these two species that before that point were living in absolute harmony. There is a war. There is almost an extinction level war. And at some point, they have to rebuild their civilization before expanding beyond the ocean. And Stapledon says, the instruments of a lean but hopeful civilization were refashioned. This was a temporary civilization, but, and this is the important but one which promised itself great adventures in the upper world. This is a beautiful story, and unfortunately, this could happen to us. But in case it does happen to us, for example, if there is another pandemic that forces us to reduce our efforts to expand into space for a few years or a decade or so, or if there is another war, let's hope the wars that we are seeing at this moment will remain confined and won't extend to the whole planet. I hope so, but you know, you can never be sure. It could be that we have to wait some, but in that case, we must promise ourselves great adventures in space, because if not, it will be the death of our spirit. So anyway, we must promise ourselves great adventures in space, beginning with the moon, then Mars, then the planets, and then beyond. And I cannot overstate the paramount importance of good science fiction. I underline good science fiction, which does not only mean good literary science fiction, but also good popular science fiction. And in fact, we have seen some great works of popular science fiction recently. And I liked this TV show, The Expanse, myself very much. I'm a big fan of all the books and the TV show, which is good. The authors call it working man science fiction, not too much scientific sophistication, not too much philosophical sophistication, but, you know, good science fiction that makes the books page turners and makes you binge watch the show. That's important to reignite the imagination of people with good science fiction, like we had in the last few decades. And of course, the masterpiece of science fiction is 2001, by Arthur C. Clarke and the film by Clarke and Stanley Kubrick. That was the great space epic of our generation. When I say our generation, I mean myself and Adriano. Sabine is younger, and I guess and I hope that some people in the audience are younger than that, but you cannot even imagine the impact that watching 2001 and reading the book had on us. It gave us a lifelong enthusiasm for space, which it is a good thing, but also a sad consideration. Something that now we are seeing in Chinese science fiction more than Western science fiction. Last year, I watched a TV show on the three-body problem of Cixin Liu. I watched it on Chinese TV. I didn't understand a word. There were subtitles, of course. There was a 30 episode that completely covered the first book. I hope there will be a follow-up. I believe this year another three-body show is going to be on Netflix. This year or next year. However, the point that I want to make is that Chinese science fiction is good. And when I read Chinese science fiction, I consider all these predictions that China will be the dominant space power in this century as something quite believable. In one of the interview, the author, Cixin Liu, said that Chinese science fiction now is going through a phase similar to the golden age science fiction in the West. You know, good writers, good works, and especially, which is the most important thing, a great impact on the people, which is making young kids in China want to become astronauts or if not space engineers. And they want to be part of this. Here in the West as well, the children wanted to be astronauts. The children of my generation wanted to be astronauts. Now, I don't know what today's kids want to become, but I do hope they will be willing to become astronauts again. We need radical optimism and radical techno-optimism. This is a very good book that I want to recommend. The Conservative Futurist by James Hawkins. And in the picture, I'm showing Guillaume Verdon, aka Beth Jesus, who is the founder of this new, rather new, techno-optimistic philosophy that goes by the name E-acceleration, which is the last kid on a block where we also have other imaginative and optimistic philosophies like Italian futurism and Russian cosmos and the extropy movements. This is what the West needs. We need an optimistic spaceflight culture with energizing visions of interplanetary, interstellar, and cosmic futures. We need the futurist space philosophy. I'm trying to make some small contribution in these directions. And we need group transcending values like spaceflight. This group transcending values is an idea from a book that criticizes some trends in today's culture, which seems too much focused on the interest of one or another specific group of people. These things that go by the name of identity politics. We need group transcendent values, and spaceflight is a good example of that. And we need to return to optimism. Now, I want to call your attention on a very good article that filmmaker Guillermo del Toro wrote for Time magazine a few years ago. Against this perception that optimism is not cool, it is, says Guillermo del Toro. Optimism is not uncool, it is rebellious and daring and vital. We must be radically optimistic. We must be radically optimistic again. Or else what happens? Well, read this. Red Moon by King Stanley Robinson is a very believable science fictional picture of a space future dominated by China. Is this what we want to happen? Last flag on the moon was a Chinese flag. I hope that the West will react. We must continue to be an important player in space expansion. Let me now move to the future, beyond the solar system, and say that we must, after the great adventures that we must promise ourselves in the solar system, we must have great expectation for great adventures for far future generations among the stars. We can go to the stars. If you want to look at technology, take a look at my book. And when I hear that we cannot go to the stars, I say nonsense. I didn't receive official permission to use the other word, a bit stronger than nonsense, that you can perhaps read on my biography. We will go to the stars. Not next year. I won't see that. But we will. By the way, back to optimism and back to the fact that we must promise ourselves great adventures in space, but for our grandchildren, even if we are not there anymore. The thing is that, you know, I'm 66 years old. I want, not only I want to see people going to the stars, but I think it's very highly likely that I won't see people going to Mars as well. Or perhaps maybe the very first exploratory mission if I manage to live that long. I don't have a great expectation for myself. What I want to see before logging off is, you know, I want to see people back on the moon, and I want to see the beginnings of the settlement of the moon, perhaps with a couple of science bases or small astronomical observatories. I don't think I will see much more than that. But that doesn't mean that I cannot be happy for our grandchildren who will see all that and more. And some future generation will see the stars. Now, let me come to this spiritual implication. And I often think that for me, watching space launches on TV, especially important space launches, like, you know, the James Webb Space Telescope, Starship, first test flight over Tennis-1. These are the important milestone space launches. To me, it's like going to church. To me, it's like attending Mass. If I am asked whether I call myself a believer or not, I do prefer to call myself a believer, but I don't go to church that often. Watching space launches is my personal ritual that looks like a religious service that enables me to feel one with the cosmos and to feel closer to this thing that we call God. And let me come to Stanley Kubrick. He had an interview with Playboy magazine a few months, I believe a few months before the film 2001 came out, or a few weeks before. And he said very interesting things. I especially like this one. There is a certain element of the lumpen literati that is so dogmatically atheist and materialist and earthbound that it finds the grandeur of space and the myriad mysteries of cosmic intelligence anathema. He was very right. He was very, very right. He elaborated on his convictions that we can construct intriguing scientific definitions of God and evoked the godlike beings that we can expect to find in the universe. I'm not going to read all that, but in a very beautiful passage of that interview, he talks of very advanced civilizations among the stars that are so much above us that we could only call them gods. And the point that I want to make is that we will become one of these very advanced civilizations ourselves, which means that we will become eventually God-like beings ourselves. God-like cosmic engineers among the stars. This is what we will become. And this is the very powerful, beautiful feeling that I have when I watched on TV our very preliminary, very small, very first baby steps on the road to the stars. We will become God-like cosmic engineers among the stars. And of course, I cannot avoid going back to the master Arthur C. Clarke. And this is a vision of a very advanced civilization in 2001. They had learned to store knowledge in the structure of space itself and to preserve their thoughts for eternity in frozen lattices of light. That means they didn't just leave biology behind and to become post-biological. They even left matter behind to become post-material. And at some point, Clarke compares them with something which long ago man had called spirit. And he says, and if there was anything beyond that, its name could only be God. And our friend Frank White, whom we all know and love, thinks that the universe itself will become a living whole, will become self-aware. The universe will become self-aware. And we are the instruments that the universe is using to become self-aware. We are actively encouraged by larger forces, says Frank, to expand beyond the Earth and help the universe become increasingly self-aware. Now, what should we call a self-aware universe? We can call it with different names. I like many names. I like the name Mind at Large, due to Aldous Huxley. I like the name Cosmic Operating System. That is one of the chapters in the book that I'm writing and plan to publish in a few months. But many people call this concept God, and why not? A self-aware universe would be God. That's the end point of all these things that we are doing. This guy said that the end point of engineering knowledge may be diving knowledge, and Arthur C. Clarke, again, observed that it may be that our role on this planet is not to worship God, but to create Him. Here we have the concept of Alpha and Omega. Alpha is the beginning of everything, the beginning of the universe. And Omega is the end point. But perhaps Alpha and Omega are the same thing. And this was said very beautifully by Olaf Stapledon. Stapledon again. He said that the universe will evolve change. And perhaps God is what happens near the end of the universe, when the universe has evolved enough. Frank Tipler said something similar too, but perhaps this end point is also the beginning of everything. Perhaps alpha and omega are the same things. And I like to interpret this concept of stapledon in this way. The universe will evolve. There will be a God, and we will be a part of the process that leads to the emergence of God. But at that point, that the end state, that mind at large, that God will be so powerful and entity that can somehow circle back to the very beginning and start guiding the universe at the very beginning, after the Big Bang or whatever, on the path that will eventually lead to God. Think about this. It's a beautiful concept, I believe. And let me end my talk by mentioning this space window in the National Cathedral in Washington, D.C., United States, which is the kind of stained window that you often see in a church with a fragment of the moon, a small lunar stone, inside the glasswork, which was presented to the cathedral by the Apollo 11 astronauts a few years after coming back from the moon. I like to consider this as the best symbol of the essential unity of science and religion, and of the very important role that spaceflight and human space expansion is going to play for science, for religion itself, for us human beings, and for the future of the universe at large. And let me just stop here, and thank you very much. I'm giving the floor back to the moderators, and I hope for an interesting discussion. I'm going to stop sharing my screen now.
Yeah, thank you, Giulio, for this interesting lecture. Adriano, you disappeared. Yeah.
He's back. He's back.
Yeah, he's back. Yeah, okay. Yeah, Adriano, I would like to give you the word. And thank you, Giulio, for this interesting lecture. I'm still waiting for some questions in the chat. So far, there are not any. But Adriano is very specialized in this topic and philosophy, and I know that he can open a nice discussion.
Yes, of course. And wow, Giulio, fantastic presentation. I'm really impressed by every single thing you said. And yes, I took some notes during your presentation. And first of all, I'm happy that you mentioned Octavia Butler. I'm a great fan of Octavia Butler, is the science fiction writer from United States. And I remember her book, The Parable of the Sower, in which she writes a very important concept that the unique God is change. She wrote, God is change.
Yes.
So it means you cannot claim to keep anything as it is, to freeze anything as it is. You cannot freeze nature as it is, just to say one thing. Nature is change. And we are part of nature, and we are part of the change, and we are part of the evolution. So I think, yes, Octavia is one of the best space philosophers that put
Cheese.
have put
Cheese indeed.
concepts in novels. That's yeah, we used to write essays. I too, I'm writing essays, but I'm also trying to write novels, because a novel maybe is an artwork that can keep
Yes.
can
Yes.
bring concepts very much better.
Yeah, I completely agree. A novel can bring a concept to people in a way that is not only intellectually but also emotionally appealing. You are very brave, I think, if you try to write novels. I don't even try. I think perhaps the reason is that I have read too much really good literature, science fiction and everything. I'm one of those compulsive writers. And when I read something by a real great writer, I immediately know that I would never be able to do anything like that. So I don't even try.
But you are right. We need very much to have good
Yes.
science fiction, modern science fiction.
Yes.
And yes, something that I like very much is the Expanse series, for instance, that by James Corey, that are two authors, by the way, and Andy Weir, of course, and the other one you mentioned with the Red Moon, Kimlin Stanley Robinson.
Yeah.
Who also brought a series on Mars, the Red Mars, Green Mars, and Blue Mars, three books where it tells the history of Mars colonization. Yes. And in
that was the was the early Robinson. Unfortunately, in the last few years, he seems to not be in love with our ideas anymore.
Yes, it is true, because I saw that he wrote a monster book about climate change or something like that, and I started to read it. By the way, in English language, it's also more demanding, of course, for us Italians. But I have to confess that I stopped reading because it was, in my idea, too much.
I didn't
on such a kind of line, but
I didn't even start.
Okay.
Well, I did read one page because it is cited in the book that I have been talking about. But I just searched in the novel for some specific keywords.
Yeah, but the three books about Mars were wonderful, because Red Mars is the beginning, the first colonization. Then the Green Mars is when the vegetable life was built on Mars by the terraforming and so on. And of course, the conservative environmentalists, they didn't want Mars to become green, because in their ideology, Mars should remain red, that is dust and desert. And the last book, the Blue Mars, was when the oceans were developing on Mars. And even in this case, there were ideological counterpositions between different ideas on how we should work with nature or not, we should transform or not, we should try to help nature to evolve and to change or not. So I think, to go back to Octavia Butler themes, no? Yeah,
it's good. It's good that you mentioned this, because as a matter of fact, people are saying these things now. Well, they have never stopped saying these things. I was reading something about something like leaving the moon in peace, not to interfere with nature, not to interfere with the development of the moon. Which
Yeah.
sounds really extreme to me. I mean, if there were intelligent aliens on the moon, I would be the first to agree. And I would never use
Yeah.
words like colonization.
Yes.
If there were non-intelligent life on the moon, like, I like to speak of lunar skiers, for example, I would also agree, because, if there is an ecology developing that has a potential to evolve someday into complex life, then perhaps the best thing that we could do would be to let this new biosphere evolve in peace. But come on, the moon, there are rocks on the moon. There are rocks.
Yeah. 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 There's not this desert.
Just
So,
rocks.
of course, yes.
It's there.
One of our duties is to bring life
Exactly.
around in the solar system. Yeah.
We would not be
And
taking anything away from life, but we will be bringing life to the moon. And also Mars, I still hope that they find some kind of very primitive forms like bacteria on Mars. There is nothing like an evolved biosphere. That is something that we already know. So that, yes, let's go. Let's bring life out there, as you said. And, it will bring me, there is so much discussion about words. For example, do we have to use the word colonization or not? I mean, if there were aliens, intelligent, even only animals, I would say no, let's not use the word colonization, because colonization means to take something that belongs to someone else. We have done too much on that on Earth.
Yes.
Let's not do all that.
discussed
But rocks, come on, they are rocks.
We discussed the point of colonization because we are just coming out in Space Renaissance from a 5 months big work, because we produced the position paper. It's 45 pages, so it's a big thing, where we are trying to focus the key critical issues before 2030. What we have to take care in this critical decade. And one of the things we discussed is the danger of a new colonialism, a space colonialism, that could mean to go there, to grab resources and bring back to Earth. This would be wrong. Space resources should be used to develop in space, not on Earth.
I don't entirely agree. Well, I do agree in part.
Mainly,
of course, well, think we don't know yet, but it seems that there are quite solid indications of this. I discuss these things in the book. Imagine that we find that there is a lot of helium-3 on the moon. Imagine that we find some way to extract it very efficiently. And imagine that we develop nuclear fusion technology for the Earth that could not work without helium-3. All these three things must come together. But it seems that all these three things are very likely to come together. The only one that I'm uncertain of is the last, because there is always the possibility that someone devises an efficient nuclear fusion scheme that does not require helium-3. But in this case, I mean, the resources from the moon would be the key to the future of energy on the Earth. And in that case, if that is the case, no, we must. It is
not an absolute dogma, no, that we should not bring anything on Earth. But I'm thinking about mineral resources from the asteroids and this kind of things. It should be mainly used to develop in space, because on Earth, I'm afraid we cannot develop more. I agree with Jeff Bezos' plan to put all the EV industry in space.
So do I.
So to start developing outside. And I would also be tempted to touch another point, but I'm afraid that will develop another webinar. Because
Yes, then
I was thinking that, but I was just I want to mention it because it was a very, very huge discussion in the co-authors group. And it is about the years, the 920s and 30s, when there was a space fever generated by the futurist movement, I think, with the artistic futurist movement in Italy, in Russia, in Germany. And in Germany, there was a group of space enthusiasts with Hermann Obert, and
von Braun.
Nebel and von Braun and other. Now there was a group that they were trying to make rockets. They had no money, but at the end, the government came and picked up von Braun and really they really made a rocket as a weapon, of course, because in the same time the Nazis took the power, and they made a V2 rocket. But at the end, von Braun and his team were brought to the USA, and they were the fathers of NASA and of the space program.
Yeah.
So there was the past century was an incubator, a great incubator of space. In the beginning, Konstantin Tsiolkovsky and Julio Verne, even before, sold some concepts, some highly effective concepts about going to space. And then we had Russian cosmists and and we had the futurism and all this big movement that was the cultural forerunner of science.
Definitely.
And of everything. So this is also is interesting, not only from the historical point of view, but also from the cultural point of view. And I feel that we have to maybe to reflect more on that, and maybe to call Marie-Louise Heuser and Alberto Cavallo, and also Thomas Matula from the United States. They were the main in this discussion, the main dealers to bring this thing outside, and but it could be for the next month.
Let's just wrap up this discussion that unfortunately we don't have the time to continue. Maybe another webinar. The thing is that I am and have always been a big fan of movements like Italian Futurism and Russian Cosmism and all the similar movements that have existed. And as a matter of fact, I am very unhappy that this philosophical sentiment kind of went down. Perhaps only now it's starting to go up again. Because I think this sentiment is good. Is good. Now, you mentioned, and I think this is one of the points that you wanted to make without stating it explicitly, that yes, okay, the enthusiasm for space has been used for war, which is true, which is very true. Werner von Braun built rockets, but unfortunately, they were sent to London instead of being sent to the moon. Now, what I think, and that does not only apply to this context, but it is a fundamental principle with a much more general applicability, is that you cannot have the possibility for something good without also creating at the same time the possibility for something bad. What can be used for good can also be used for the bad. And the more something can be used for good, the more it can also be used for bad. Unfortunately, I don't think we have a solution for this. and I don't think there will ever be a solution for this. This is just one of the way that the universe works.
We can only say, we can only observe that looking at the history of the past century, however, neither the Nazis were not able to kill the space enthusiasm and to use it for war, because von Braun, his idealism and his team went to work for, in America, and they were the father of NASA. So at the end, this history was channeled for the good, not for the bad. That's important, because if we think that Nazism was one of the worst political thing of the past century, together with the Stalinism, of course, no, because we can never forget that they are two, Hitler and Stalin, not only one. And yes, well, neither these two monsters were able to kill enthusiasm for space and for civilian space, for the civilian development of space. That's important, I think. We have to underline that. Okay. Thank you.
Here's a last question from the chat. Did you read the book of Nick Canas, The New Martians, a scientific novel, and he is a professor and a space psychiater. And do you think psychology could be an essential point?
Psychology could be?
An essential point. Essential point. An important point as well, of a sense.
Whenever you talk of people, psychology is always a very central point. But I didn't catch the name of this book. That sounds like something that I should read.
The New Martians.
The New Martian.
Yeah.
Because I don't, for some reason, I don't see the chat.
Nick Canas with the K. Canas.
I will look for this book.
Okay, and here's a comment from Mikhail Basko.
I don't see the group chat, but you see it, because
Yes,
this is a webinar
this
and not a normal Zoom. I see.
Yes.
So I want to read that book.
Yeah, okay. Just a comment from Mikhail Basko, Baskov, not a question, and Korolev, genau, Korolev in the USSR had to fight a long battle to persuade the generals to allocate funds for the civilian programs.
Yes.
Also, yeah.
That,
and
that
Korolev,
that is another very interesting figure. I've been reading one of the biographies of Sergei Korolev.
Yeah.
A giant,
he was
really
supposed
a
to
giant.
get yes, he was supposed to get a Nobel Prize, but the Soviet Union didn't give his name out. They said it was the Soviet people who invented.
There is also a novel written by an Italian science fiction writer that imagined that Korolev, before dying, managed to escape the Earth on one of the experimental rockets that the Soviet Union was developing at the time, and went to Mars. And in a few decades from now, Paolo Resi, and is a very he wrote 3 books. I know only that one.
Yeah.
I'll look for the other 2.
Okay. No, I think we had a nice evening again, and thank you, Giulio, for joining us, for giving this interesting lecture.
Thank you very much for having me.
And I think we should invite you again, because as I saw, you have another topic on your mind. So we should do it next year. And I also would like to invite you to our next webinar. Maximo Roa Garçon wants to talk about robots for supporting human expansion in space. So maybe you are interested to listen to it too. I
Definitely.
always invite
I'll
everyone
definitely
to
be.
come to our webinar series. And I also would like to mention, so our next webinar will be on the 4th of March. I also would like to mention we are working here all as volunteers. So if you want to support us, we need any kind of help. If you want to join us, if you want to be part of our academy and or support us in a financial way, yeah, or to work with us and to watch our webinars. So I wish you all a nice evening. Thank you, Julie, again for being here with us.
Thank you again.
Thank you to our audience
And
for joining us,
to the
and thank you,
channel.
Adriano. Yeah.
Subscribe to the channel, to the
Yeah,
YouTube.
and subscribe to the channel, so we need fans. And thank you very much. Goodbye.
Bye. Ad astra.